South of Midnight is the newest third-person action-adventure title from Compulsion games, a team which is most known for developing We Happy Few, this time taking us into the deep south of the United States to experience the myths and meet the creatures of southern folklore. From surviving the floods and traversing the bayou to fighting mythical beings and exploring fantasized realities, South of Midnight tries to capture a unique setting that we've not had many attempts to explore in the video game space. But how well does it manage to capture this world, and at the end of the day, is it fun to play? That's what I'm here to discuss. This review will of course be spoiler free, and I'll keep detailed story talk to the opening hour of the game. If you want to hear more reviews on upcoming games and gaming news, subscribe, or if you have any feedback, please drop it in the comments section below. South of Midnight opens with our protagonist Hazel packing her belongings as a hurricane is threatening her hometown of Prospero. After a brief introduction to her mother, Hazel sets out to check on the residents. This is where Hazel's home gets swept away, taking her mother with it, and where our journey starts as Hazel tries to track her down. I want to open up this review with what I considered being the enormous elephant in the room when I first saw this game revealed, which was the stop motion graphic style. Now, I was not a fan when I saw this initially, despite loving the art style of the game itself. I have a lot of respect for Compulsion for trying something different, and I personally just prefer smoother animations. I decided that to give it a fair review and let the game have a chance of changing my mind, I played the opening 2 hours of the game with the stop motion enabled. It didn't really change my mind though, and ultimately decided it was not for me. I found that it made the game feel less responsive and the animations harder to read, especially in combat. Luckily though, they've included an option to toggle this off, which I ended up playing on and enjoyed the feel of the game a lot more. So for anyone unsure because of the stop motion gameplay, I want to make you aware that there is an option to disable it. It is not perfect though. The cutscenes are still in stop motion no matter what you select, and some things in the world, like the brambles which spike out when you approach, still animate as if they were stop motion, making the game feel a little jarring at times. It didn't make a major difference to my feelings on the gameplay and the presentation overall, but it did leave me wondering at times what is stop motion and what was frame lag. After looking at the performance though, the game itself runs quite well. I was maintaining an 85 to 95 FPS, running everything on the highest possible settings, at native 4K with 0 DLSS enabled. This seems to scale down nicely, with the minimum spec being a 1060, and a recommended GPU being a 2060. Cutscenes are locked to 30 though, and being in stop motion it did take me out of it a bit, switching from a smooth gameplay section instantly to 30 FPS stop motion again. Depending on how you play, your mileage may vary on this. I also didn't experience any bugs apart from a slight visual glitch here and there. The responsiveness, as mentioned, did not feel great, especially with the stop motion on, but improved when I disabled it, but I still had input lag issues throughout the game. South of Midnight has also been Steam Deck verified for all the Steam Deck users out there. You can play this one with no issues. As always, I will drop a link to Digital Foundry's video in the description should you want to know more on the performance and tech used in this game, as they always do a wonderful job deep diving into that. As a small side note before moving on, like I said with Atomfall, this isn't a long title. The main story clocks in at just over 10 hours, with up to 20 hours if you want to complete and collect everything. My opinion is that the game suits a shorter runtime, which I'll get into a bit later, but it's worth making it clear as I'm aware some of you want to buy a longer title and some of you may be looking for something on the shorter side. Picking up from the intro, after the storm hits and your mother is swept away, Hazel goes chasing after her through Prospero, leading her to her grandmother's house, where she eventually finds the artifacts which allow her to become a weaver, a type of magical mender who can access the grand tapestry, which is the fabric of the universe that brings it all together. This allows her to interact with the world in ways not possible before and commune and mend broken spirits or expel ill emotions and lingering pain along the way. Gameplay design and more importantly the game's story use the grand tapestry and these tools as ways to bring the world to life, allowing Hazel to interact with the world in different ways and hear the stories that the people have left behind. Throughout the campaign's story, you will uncover your family's past and learn about the different disputes that have taken place, as well as how it all relates to the folklore setting this game takes place in. The intro was very good at grabbing my attention and the pacing kept me engaged the whole way through, and while I found the overarching main story enjoyable, the best storytelling for me happened within the individual chapters themselves. The game is comprised of 14 chapters in total, and within these chapters are self-contained stories that help progress the overarching narrative. These stories tell tales from the deep south folklore, with most of them ending up quite dark. These tales are backstories to a decent selection of the characters or mythical creatures you will meet along the way, allowing you to see who they were before and how they got to where they are now. This style of storytelling was engaging, and was the main source of enjoyment I actually got out of this game, which I will touch on a bit later on. It also brought the setting to life, giving me more of a connection to all the characters we meet along the journey. Now I want to move on to the gameplay itself, starting with the difficulty settings. At the start of the game, you are shown 4 different difficulties to choose from and an additional custom difficulty. These are your standard easy through hard, which work exactly as you would expect by modifying damage dealt and damage received. Then there is the modular custom difficulty that lets you fine tune the game to more of your exact liking. I would not say this game is very difficult. I started on Weaver, which was the default, eventually moving up to Grand Weaver to try and add some extra difficulty, but ultimately it's not the kind of game to give you a massive gameplay challenge. For those who do struggle with games though, you can make it easy all the way down to making your character invincible. As I will discuss in a bit, this game is more about the story itself than the gameplay. So for the individuals who do want an easy story experience, these difficulties do allow you to do that. If I had to sum up the gameplay of South of Midnight in one word, the word I would use would be repetitive. It's built around a core loop that happens over and over again. As I mentioned before, the game is segmented into chapters, with each chapter having its own story that feed the overarching narrative. Or sometimes the story takes place over 1 or 2 chapters. These chapters will give you an area to explore. These areas contain traversal sections and puzzles. Here you will see standard movement that you would find in pretty much any modern day video game. Basic climbing mechanics, double jumps, gliding, and the grappling hooks to certain points, with very simple puzzles to solve and combat encounters to clear. The levels themselves are quite linear, with a set path and some occasional branching optional paths to explore. These optional paths will contain notes, collectibles, and objects called floofs, which is the upgrade currency of this game. They are generally off the beaten path and can be hidden under sheet metal or at the end of climbing sections. You also have your companion named Crouton. This is a stitched puppet that Hazel has had from her childhood. Crouton comes to life with Weaver magic and lets you explore sections Hazel can't enter. This lets you get into animals' nests and underground tunnels to find extra floofs and acts as a nice way to break up the gameplay cycle a bit. The progression skill system for Hazel is very linear. You unlock new powers from different Weaver tools you will find on the journey as part of the story. Outside of that, you can spend floofs on skills. The main skill tree is a straight line down with 2 skills that have 2 different choices. There are then these 4 small sections to upgrade which correspond to the skills that you can use, with each upgrade slightly amplifying these skills. This is a very basic skill system and all the skills are very predictable, doing things like adding damage or lowering the cooldown, etc, etc. When in combat, you will fight Haints. These come in many forms and are remnants of pain or hate left over in the world. These fights take place in small arenas around what is called a knot. Once all enemies are defeated, you'll be able to destroy the knot, which will remove the corruption and clear the area for you to progress. There are no enemies outside of these knots that you will encounter. After clearing a knot, you'll be shown a bit of backstory to the area, or the boss of the zone that you are currently in. The core gameplay loop is that you will enter a zone, clear the knots around the area, get shown the lore of the area or the boss when doing so, and this will ultimately lead to a boss fight, which are nicely put together set pieces, not very difficult, but very enjoyable, and backed up with some great music, singing the tale of the boss, which was great to listen to and a highlight of every fight. This then rinse and repeats 5 or 6 times throughout the game. The gameplay for me is the weakest part of South of Midnight. I was starting to get tired of it towards the end. Luckily the game is paced in a way where the progression feels continuous and the supporting stories are engaging. The world itself is also a treat to look at, with many picturesque scenes along the way that I had to stop to take in. Many of the areas you will visit will feel very grounded in reality, on what you'd expect to see in the Deep South, while having their own artistic flair added. Most of the zones resemble swamps or woodlands, but there is one area which is more of a built-up metropolis built in a dream space which really let their creativity run wild. If you like the art style, there is plenty to feast your eyes on during Hazel's journey. Upon game completion, there is no New Game Plus option, but there is a chapter select which allows you to choose a chapter to go back to, retaining all your upgrades. It also tells you how many of each collectible are left to find in that zone. Helpful if you plan to go back and complete anything that you've missed. The last thing that I wanted to touch on before concluding this review was the music. As I've already mentioned, each boss or key event has its own theme made, almost telling the tale that you are experiencing. There are also plenty of musical numbers that came up while exploring the levels. Every single track that appeared was themed to the music of the Deep South, and helped sell me on the world I was spending my time in. It's worth a special mention as I feel like a lot of care was put into this at Compulsion Games, and it was prevalent when I was playing it. Right, it's time to wrap up the review. What are my thoughts on South of Midnight, and should you pick this one up? Firstly, I would say this game is story first and not gameplay first. The gameplay is not its strongest point. It's very basic and incredibly repetitive. It kind of reminds me of them old PS2 era games or Xbox 360 games that were spin-offs of franchises. What makes this game enjoyable is all the stories you will encounter along the way, and the little special moments that will stick in your head long after the credits roll. If this story looks like something that's not for you, then I would skip this one. If you're interested in this area and the folklore attached, and you don't mind the gameplay loop, then I'd recommend giving it a go. It does only come in at around 10 plus hours, but it's not a full price title. I also think with the gameplay loop, the game being any longer would detract from the overall experience. To me, this is a perfect Game Pass game. Easy to pick up, does not overstay its welcome, and if you're on the fence you can try it without spending extra cash. With Atomfall also on Game Pass, Expedition 33 going on there at launch, and Doom coming out soon after that, there's a lot of games to experience there, but at this point it's sounding like an ad, so I'm going to wrap this up. That's all for me. Have you played South of Midnight? If so, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I will read every comment, so if you have any feedback for me, drop it down there as well. If you're enjoying the video, hit that like button. And if you want to hear more of my ramblings, please consider subscribing, as it helps provide opportunities to make better content for the channel. As always, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and thanks for watching.